opposite the existing building and redevelopment provide 35 dwellings incorporating parking, open space, landscaping and associated infrastructure. Who's presenting that? Kevin. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. First thing I'd like to do is bring members' attention to the supplementary reports, which has a number of representations that were received after the report was completed, covering ecology, impact on little greys, environmental impact assessments, and some other issues. And then there's some detailed information submitted by the applicant with regard to particular issues that were raised in the reports. As a result of that, the plans have been updated in terms of condition 24 to reflect the additional information and the amendments. There's also a new condition, condition 22 has been amended by the addition of the updated ecology survey, which was received today, so that any development will be carried out in accordance with that. Also, the recommendation should be amended to delete the 106 requirement for financial contribution towards the footpath. So it's now just to be delivered via a condition, which is now condition 23. So coming to the presentation, I'll take members through the proposal, through the site, and then go through the key issues. So the application site is a former school. As members can see here, it is enclosed by properties to the south, which is Style Croft, and properties to the west, which is Little Braes. And then you've got to the east, you've got the existing Perfect Green Primary School. Basically, this site is surplus to requirements, and this is because of the expansion of the adjoining primary school. Show the school show things in a bit more wider context in terms of how this site sits, with in particular the Manor Hatch up here within a short walk, and it's accessible to local services and to bus routes. This plan does actually show the distinction between the two properties, which is the line here. And you can see this area at the rear, which I'll show a photo of. This is the playing fields which were ceased to be used in March 2018, and these are the playing fields associated with the existing school, and those are sufficient for its needs. I'll come to the impact on the adjoining properties in due course. So in terms of the proposal, it's a mix of terrace houses and detached houses. So you have terrace here and terrace here facing Little Braes and school, facing Little Braes and school, and then perpendicular you have a series of detached and terraces going to the southern part of the site. A key feature here is the footpath that will go through which is an existing hedgerow, which will then access out onto this path which runs along the southern boundary of the site. This is allotments at the moment. So looking at the site plan in a bit more detail to show that there is distances. So some of the distances are quite substantial. So it took 31 metres to some of the properties in Little Braes, and 26 metres in terms of the property at the front, which is number 26. In terms of the distances of the gardens to school, distances are in the order of 11 metres. In terms of the southern part of the site, the proposed dwellings are set to 21 metres, from particularly the property that had the main impact would be number 68, Stylecroft, which is shown here in terms of the distance shown. So going through the elevations, this shows what the entrance would look. The design has, so this is the elevation looking at the entrance to the site. So it has 3-storey buildings to provide some element of gateway, and these are the terraces that face back onto Little Braes. And then this shows the opposite side in terms of the properties that would back onto the school, and then moving through the site with various groups of terraces and detached houses. So I'll show you these are the ones on the southern edge of the site, showing at the top, in the middle, and then the bottom side, with these fairly distinctive pitched roof. So coming to the specific design of the properties for 2, 4, 6, and the odd numbers here, which are these properties here. These are the ones that will face Little Grays. They're designed so that they have these large first floor terraces, and those terraces have an element of setback, and there's a specific condition to making sure that the use of these terraces would not result in harm to the amenity of the neighbours. And you'll also note, first floor, there is only one window here, first floor, backing onto Little Grays, which serves a bathroom. So in terms of the other parts of the terrace on the other side, facing the Puffer Green School, again similar arrangement with the first floor terraced area, and also a bathroom window overlooking the school. Coming to plot 15, which is this plot here on the site, shows the design. And these are the 3-storey buildings that are on the front. Again, we equally also have this first floor terrace, which would be equally controlled. And then coming to the plots at the rear, showing the design at the rear in terms of these properties. These are the properties that face Skycroft, and then those are the slightly different design of the ones to at the ends, because they're slightly larger. And then these are the internal terraces at 16 to 26, and then these are detached houses. So going through the photos of the site. This is the existing site, the existing school. The site boundary is the fence here, and you can just about make out here the location of the former school. So it shows the junction of Little Grays, shows 160 Little Grays to 161 to 160, so down here to 164 is. In terms of 161 to 168, Little Grays, we'll come to that in due course. Shows the school and its parking, and it shows Little Grays, and you will note that as a lot of Harlow, it has most of its, not all the parking for Little Grays is on the street, there's no off-street parking, so parking is a particular issue in the locality. This shows the rear of 161 to 168 Little Grays, and you will note that the site boundary is essentially here where this hedgerow is, and there is a gap between the rear boundary of the adjoining properties where there's existing landscaping. This shows the existing school and the former school, so the existing school is here, and this shows the former school. And there's garage courts, which I'll come back to the relevance of that. And at this point, it's worth noting the existing landscaping that is on the boundary, because landscaping on boundaries does mitigate the impact on residential amenity. So number 68, Starcroft, which I'll come to at the end of this presentation, there's a particular impact which has to be carefully considered. This shows the former playing fields at the rear. You can see the boundary between the playing fields for Perfect Green School, and this shows the former school. This is an area that was used as playing fields in up to March 2018. Again, showing you the other direction. This is taken from the garage course from Starcroft, and this area here is the hedgerow wildlife area, which is identified in the ecology report as having some value and will be protected. And the footpath will go through this area. So coming to the rear of the site, as I mentioned earlier, there is a contribution, there is a condition now, and works to improve this footpath which goes between Starcroft and the rear of the site. The access to the site is probably where the pointer is there. So coming to the main determining issues. The main determining issues are the principle, the loss of the school and the playing fields, the impact on access and highway safety, and the impact on amenity of adjoining residents. So taking the first issue, this is a brownfield site and is a site where the school is surplus to requirements, so it's a site that housing would naturally come forward for. It's not identified in the local plan, and it would be a windfall site. So the policies of the plan do support the principle of development. Coming to the loss of the school and the playing fields, as I've said, the playing fields were used until March 2018. The loss of the school is acceptable as it's served vacant and surplus to requirements. There is a contribution towards of 75,708 that was secured through a legal agreement towards Church Langley, playing fields. This is a sum of money that's been negotiated following the council's playing pitch strategy. Has identified that as a particular need, and so that on that basis, Sporting would have no objection, and so on that basis, that issue, the loss of the playing field and loss of the school, can be accepted. So in terms of the third issue, which is the impact on access and highway safety, as I've mentioned, the area has a particular issue with on-street parking. But it's also a very accessible area, as I showed earlier, in terms of the access to local services and bus routes. For this proposal, the parking provisions at 65 spaces, which is 82% of the 79 spaces that are required by the parking standards. So given it's accessible, as I said, accessible to local services, the provision is considered acceptable, and also there's been no highway objection to the proposal. On that basis, the proposal is acceptable in terms of access and highway safety. Coming to the final issue, which is the impact on the amenity of adjoining occupiers. As I said, the main issue is the impact on 161 to 168 Little Grays, and it's considered that because of the distance and also the orientation and also the conditions restricting the use of the access, that the distance of in excess of 21 metres, the impact on these properties here would be considered to be acceptable. In terms of the impact on the property at the top, which is particularly impacted because this is 3-storey, it's also considered the distance and the landscaping. As I showed in the photos, there is a gap here between the rear boundary of 160 and the site boundary. In terms of the impact on the school, the gardens are quite small. However, these properties are 2-storey and would largely overlook the top of the school. And also, as part of the proposal, a condition is requested so that landscaping on all the boundaries can be supplemented to mitigate any impacts on privacy and the impact on adjoining occupiers. Coming to the final issue, which is the impact on number 68 Star Croft in terms of this relationship, it's considered that because of the location of the windows, the design has been amended so that they have been handed, so the bathroom is now at the rear and will be obscured later at the first floor. The bedroom, so when you're talking about a bedroom window on this elevation, its relationship to 68 Style Croft, it's considered that given the distance and the landscaping on that boundary, that it would not give rise to any significant impact on the residential amenity of that property. So on that basis, the recommendation is for grant. Thank you, members.
Thank you, Mr. Right. We have a statement from Caroline News. Are you going to read that out?
I'm disappointed that I was unable to attend in person, having only been given 2 weeks' notice of the meeting despite asking since January on several occasions as to when it would take place. I'm also surprised that only snippets of objection letters have been included in the back. This one, my written statement of material objection, and all of this letter included in the statement should be read out. Originally, there was no intention to bring this to committee, and officers were making the decision until I requested a scheme of delegation. The planning process disregarded the residents and stated that, quote, this planning would not be controversial, end quote. In 2019, I wrote and telephoned both ECC and Harlow to ascertain who owned the land, as the bushes hadn't been cut for over 3 years, and was told it was neither's land, even though clearly this process had started behind closed doors. I have tried to get information on planning previously under FOI, and I've been reviewing the LAP. It's never mentioned this area as being open for planning, so I then put it forward as a windfield site is not acceptable and disingenuous. No indication of the site was allocated under the emerging or adopted LAP in December 2020. The whole point of the LAP is so residents can see the decisions. DG 28 of the Harlow Design Guide says new buildings should relate to their setting, strengthen, enhance, protect and create local character. They must meet criteria that the development mustn't have an adverse effect on the character of the locality, appearance of street scene or amenities enjoyed by occupiers of neighbouring dwellings. There will be overshading with squeezed houses up to the edge of the site with an impact on schooling. Neighbouring back gardens require sensitive response by limiting building heights, ensuring primary outlets face inwards rather than onto neighbours, and an interrupted view with no overlooking issues real or perceived that will make the proposal unacceptable. I will be overlooked directly by plot 30 into my adjoining bedrooms, so I object to this incorrect statement. Crucially, council policy also states that there should be no parallel parking due presumably for environmental impact, yet these plans have extensive double parking which shouldn't be permitted. Council guidelines have conditions referencing hedgerows and lots of natural habitat would be destroyed with an impact on wildlife. Harlow is a garden town, with these plans build in grassland. To say this is compensated by small personal gardens won't replace what is natural land in keeping with the Gibbard philosophy. Harlow Council is proud to have a plaque in the town centre saying in honour of Frederick Gibbard stating, if you seek one monument, look around you. This is no longer the case when a significant piece of grassland is being destroyed. It says that this is a brownfield site. I agree that the current school and playground is a brownfield site. There is no acknowledgement that the ground covering intended properties 25 to 35 will take over green space. Consideration should be given not building on this and retaining the green space as a piece of natural land with significant wildlife being retained.
Thank you. Right, I've got a local councillor down. Swartz wants to say a few words. Where are you down? Come up. It was a bit late asking you to speak.
Yeah,
but
do
I
it.
thought I would have the local council. I think it was important.
Thank you, Chair, for allowing me to speak this evening. I do apologise for the late notice. I will try and keep my comments brief because I think it's warm enough in here as it is. I'm here tonight to utterly oppose this ridiculous application on behalf of residents in Perford Green, Little Bray, Starcroft and surrounding areas. First, I absolutely don't believe that this is the right site for these houses. This green space, as we've just heard, is much loved and a big amenity to these residents. It should be opened back up and stay as it is. These houses will have a huge impact on the surrounding areas, and that's the first reason for which I oppose this. The second, and more importantly, the second reason I want to oppose this is because of the barbaric, harebrained decision that's clearly been made by someone who's never visited Bush Fair, that Church Langley would receive financial benefit of this development. This should absolutely be supporting Bush Fair's young people and families and not those in Church Langley. It's absolutely preposterous to believe anything otherwise. I think it's nonsensical, irrational, risible, insulting, in fact, for people of Bush Fair. And as the French would say, it's stupide, débile, bête. I won't go on. I think I've made my feelings clear. But if it comes to me lying in front of the diggers, dressed as Batman to ensure this money benefits the great people of Bush Fair, then so be it. I actually oppose this, as do many residents in the local area, and I will offer gladly to the developers and anyone else that believes this is a good idea to walk through the many playing sites between Perford Green and Church Langley to show them that there's much better areas to spend this money. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. So I've got Emma Walker for the applicant, agent applicant. I'd like to go to this Lisa's directing you. Thank you very much.
My name is Emma Walker from Phase 2 Planning and Development, and I'm representing Essex County Council, the applicant for this planning application. As you'll see from the committee papers, this former junior school site is redundant since the school merged with a neighbouring infant school to become a primary school. Essex Housing, the development arm of Essex County Council, have a strong commitment towards good placemaking and high quality design, and have worked closely with the planning offices and an urban designer to provide a well-designed scheme of 35 houses on this site. The design creates an attractive and functional area of open space and provides a pedestrian link through the site. The applicant is committed to enhancing the footpath linking the site to the west to ensure that a safe route is provided through the site. The houses provide a contemporary approach that respects and complements the character of the surrounding area. Sustainability has been a central consideration with the inclusion of air source heat pumps, integrated PV panels, secure cycle parking and electric vehicle charging points for all 20 dwellings that have in-curtilage parking, and a further 4 charging points for communal car parking spaces. There are local services and facilities nearby, and the site has good public transport links, so it has been possible to provide a scheme that is not parking dominated. Essex Housing are keen to provide as much affordable housing on site as possible. Detailed viability review, a successful application for grant funding, and discussions with the council during the course of the application has led to the provision of 6 affordable homes, 2 of which will be M43 compliant, with a late stage viability review. This level of parking has been independently assessed by specialist consultants appointed by Harlow Council, who confirmed that the level of affordable housing is appropriate. These 6 affordable housing units represent a clear benefit which weighs in favour of the proposals. The dwellings have been carefully designed to minimise overlooking. A construction management plan will control any impacts on neighbours, including the school and its pupils during the construction phase. While suggestions have been provided for materials and landscaping, these matters will be subject to conditions and will need to be agreed with the council in due course. To summarise, the application plans and supporting documents demonstrate that this redundant former school site can be developed to provide 35 houses in a well-designed, sensitive manner, having careful regard to sustainability. The scheme proposes a good mix of housing which will make a positive contribution towards the housing needs of the district. I hope that members follow the recommendations of their officers and approve this planning application. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, members, questions and clarifications, not in discussions yet.
Actually, I think Councillor Danvers was first. You had your hand first.
Sorry. Would you like to speak?
I said I think Councillor Danvers had his hand up before.
I didn't see it.
Didn't see it.
Go with me on that, doesn't matter.
Okay. Right. One of the points I've noticed here is that the matter relating to affordable housing. That I read somewhere in here that the benchmark is 30% and this falls below. I think it's 16%. I stand to be corrected if I'm wrong. The whole point then related to the viability and cost of the project. Now I can't see that in here for us to make any assessment of whether the project is viable or not.
Councillor, it's questions and clarifications, not
Okay, so my
debate will come in a minute.
okay, fine. My question is, can we see a breakdown to see that to make that assessment? The cost.
Breakdown of
Cost
what?
on that. Sorry?
Do you understand that?
They've done a viability assessment.
Yeah, there is a viability assessment.
Yes, but it doesn't show numbers.
Doesn't show the numbers of
Yes.
social housing.
It doesn't show
Affordable
the whole project.
The purpose of the viability assessment is to show that that's the maximum number they can do
Okay.
within the budget for building those houses.
Okay,
And
but
allow, does that make sense?
It makes sense, but it doesn't answer the point. Sorry, if you understand what I mean. The point is, we are basically being told it is not viable to build more affordable houses under this budget, but we don't know what the budget is. Does that make sense?
So, Councillor, just to be clear, a viability assessment was provided as a part of this application. We had an independent assessor assess the viability assessment. Now this is what it threw up, that 16% is all we can get.
Okay, fine. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Danvers? We apparently received a report at 5 o'clock this afternoon. I haven't seen that. Could therefore, Gavin, be more explicit about the environmental impact on this site, and could he actually refer to what's been sent out on email to us, please, in regards to things like mature trees being cut down? You said there's some being preserved, but what's actually being lost?
Right, okay. So on this plan, you can see the landscaping. There was a tree survey submitted with the application, which showed that the number of trees that could be retained. Also, there was also an ecology survey that was submitted with the application. And as I said, the area of in terms of the main area of area is this area here, in the southwest corner of the site. And I probably can show that by showing the photograph here. This is that area here. This is which is identified in the supplementary agenda as the ecological in terms of hedgerow H2, which is, according to the ecological report, 45 metres in length, 2 metres wide at the base, so it has a number of different species. And then within the ecological report, provides some detail with regard to how that area can be thinned out and how the footpath can be put into that area, and that is subject to a specific condition. There was a further ecology report which was submitted today, and that was why the condition was amended. So it's about retention of that area, and all the other trees are being retained. So you can see the trees retained here. So in terms of the quality of the scheme, trees are being retained. The hedgerow is going to be retained and become a habitat area. So this is what these notations are on the plan, with the footpath running through that. And there'll obviously be measures to ensure that the ecology of the site is not harmed, and hence the need for a detailed condition referencing the recommendations of the technical report submitted.
So no trees will be lost?
I said no significant trees would be lost. There's obviously going to be some scrub that would be lost, but the tree survey was submitted with the application, and that was looked at by the council's tree officer, who concluded that the trees that were being lost would not be significant, and there is a detailed landscaping scheme that is proposed as part of this scheme to reinforce and to supplement the existing landscaping on the site and on its boundaries.
Okay, Councillor. Any other questions? Yeah, Councillor Susan.
Thank you, Chair. In the report you said about allotments, what's actually happening with the allotments? Are they being kept or not?
The allotments are outside the boundary of the site and not subject to this application.
Right, okay.
Councillor First.
Coming back to the trees, is there going to be a preservation order put onto those to protect those trees for just in case that it falls on private land?
The test for tree preservation order is whether they are significant in terms of amenity, and that will be that's a separate exercise which I have asked the council's tree officer to look at with regard to whether there is a need for a tree preservation order. But notwithstanding that, the trees that fall outside the boundary of the site and also fall within the site are integral to the acceptability of the proposal. So if they are lost, there are detailed conditions requiring detailed landscaping, and the report is very clear that the landscaping on the boundaries is key to the acceptability in terms of mitigating against the impact in terms of loss of amenity and the impact on adjoining properties.
Okay, thanks for that. Any more questions? Councillor Livings.
Mr. Chairman, I have mentioned this before, but I still have it in my mind as much as we need these new houses. And I'm very surprised that we've got 35 new houses being built, which are all of a grey material. I'm not saying that we definitely need these houses, but I don't understand in an area where all the buildings are red brick, why they have built these in a grey material. Is this because it's a cheaper?
Yeah, you've got a question.
Yeah.
We can go
Is
to
it
the
cheaper?
Is it cheap? Is it cheaper for the type of bricks they're proposing?
Well, we've got a materials condition, councillor, so we'll be dealing with the materials of the application at a later stage. So we understand your concern, and we're going to
Yes, I am concerned about it. It doesn't seem to fit in with the area.
and that's fine. So we're going to secure details of the materials by way of condition. So we're going to look at the materials in the round separately.
Can I add to that as well? On the supplementary agenda, there is some detail from the applicant dealing with brickwork on page 6 in terms of their approach, and as been indicated, it is condition 4 that will require the detailed submission of details. So we will get the details to be high quality, not cheap, to make sure that they do reflect the costs that are reflected in the financial viability assessment, because that's one of the issues that we have, is that the cost of this scheme, because they are using high quality materials, pushes the amount of affordable housing, because the costs of this scheme are significant, because these are individually designed units with high quality materials.
Can I ask a follow-on question there? Is there any reason why we can't match this with the existing houses?
No, there's nothing that precludes us from doing that, councillor. But what we will do is assess it as part of the details pursuant application to make sure whatever materials that are approved match the existing character of the area, or at least respect the existing character of the area.
Okay. Any more questions, or we're going to the debate? Question?
One more question. When mentioned in the application, there's going to be a compensation payment.
Get a bit closer to your mic.
Sorry, it's mentioned. Sorry, apologies. It's mentioned in the application. There's going to be a payment for compensation payment for playing fields, and also one for secondary schools. Is that correct? Yes. When will they be paid? And will the application be, approval be subject to those being received prior to work commencing, or what is the time frame for those?
With 106, they'll be subject to the 106 agreement, so planning permission and the detail of that is yet to be negotiated, but the logic is that those contributions should be paid in early parts of the phase of development, because they're essentially mitigating the impact of the development. So therefore they have to be received, and those works have to be done, put in place. So you don't want people just moving into their houses with children and not have enough school places. So you have to have a lead-in, so they have to be, so the trigger has to be potentially on the completion or on the start of works, or even before those works actually start.
Okay, thank you.
And also 106 is being combined as well. So, okay. So no more questions. We'll go to debate. Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. Following on from what Councillor Silver, I think it's name, said, I understand there's been lots of complaints for the residents in the area. I think one of the complaints is probably because of the parking. I don't think the layout that's been suggested allows all the cars to be parked, so there may be problems verging on the housing estates. The affordable housing, they haven't met the match that we want. It's not 33% now, it's 16%, I think. And the reason for that is viability. Now, I've argued this before in these meetings. If they're not viable, why are they building them? And I just think that's ridiculous. In regard to the sports money, which we need to look at how that's looked after, that seems wrong to me, that the people of Bush Fair don't reap the benefits of that as somewhere else. No matter where else it is. But the people of Bush Fair going to have to put up with this if it goes through, and I'm not getting any reward for it at all. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I really don't know where the officer is coming from on this. First of all, this isn't in the local plan, and to actually glibly say that this is a bonus for extra housing, I think to tear up planning principles in this particular way defies all logic. The second thing is Essex County Council has a lot to answer for. These playing fields all over Harlow were given in the local plan in perpetuity for schools, for green areas. Grace Grove is one of the most intensely developed areas in Harlow. Okay, it has Nichols Field to one side and the Phoenix Fields to the other, but at the end of the day, internally, particularly in this location, it is very, very intensely developed already. So the first thing is this goes against already our local plan, which is only less than a year old. Secondly, Essex County Council is a public authority losing public land in this particular way to get their grubby hands on a few £1 million through Essex Housing is quite out of the question, Chair, as far as I'm concerned. The other area, I'm obviously going to vote against this, but if it does go through, I think it beggars belief that the people in this community of Bushfair and Grays Grove are not going to be the recipients of monies that's going to actually be set aside. And goodness knows the council's actually been sitting on tens of thousands of pounds for Church Langley playing fields since the area was developed. And that money has never been spent because the local councillors there cannot get their act together. So goodness knows really, how much is it? 76, did you say? £1,000? Where on earth, if 51,000 odd can't be spent, when's 76,000 going to be spent if this does go through? It begs a lot of questions, Chairperson, and in that particular regard, I certainly cannot counsel this proposal. I feel very strongly about this.
Can I just correct you on one thing now? I'm sorry if the Church Langley Fund was something that was in control of the previous administration, not this one. So to try and bring that into the equation, I think is wrong. Thank you. Councillor Clark.
Yes, I agree with Councillor Danvers. When I look at this, I think, right, yes, there's a brownfield site, and there is an improvement to the footpath, which residents wanted. But then I'm a half empty glass person, and you look at the affordable housing, we've got 6 affordable houses, we have not got the 30% policy, so in that case, it certainly isn't. I know the viability argument has been used, but nevertheless that includes, I think, an assumption of 20% profit. Well, they can make other assumptions rather than 20% profit. Now that's one reason. The second major reason is the loss of the playing field, as Mike said. It isn't of educational use, which is the entire argument has been built on an educational use now, but it is a green open space, and our policy is to protect green open spaces. So the community, as Mike said again, it is a dense community, and green spaces are an essential giving part of the policy, and we've lost that. Yes, the community obviously valued it. We've got 39 opposition, which is a really large number, so obviously they're not happy, and the Church Langley may be happy, but it isn't going to help perfect green, as the objector said. It is a case of overdevelopment, especially using the green space, and there is actually insufficient parking according to our policy, and actually a loss of trees, I think, but the main arguments are social housing and the loss of the green playing field.
Thank you, Councillor. Anybody else try to debate?
I'd like to also endorse the points I made earlier in the previous meeting and which have been raised now regarding the funds going to Church Langley. I do not see how that can be justified, and I don't believe it's an issue for the developer to stipulate, which I understand he hasn't. But there are two very big playing fields in Bushfair Ward, Nicholsfield and Bushfair playing fields themselves. I'm sure those facilities, that sort of funds could be used to enhance those facilities. Pavilion, build some tennis courts, whatever. There are other uses in the ward to which those funds could be applied. I think that should be, I can't see the justification for spending it to Church Langley or anywhere else like that. And secondly, back to this point about the affordable housing. I think the point has been made, and maybe I didn't make it clear enough, but it is a question of return on investment or expected return that determines the viability, and without clearer numbers, it's very difficult to really assess that it is feasible or not to achieve a higher percentage of affordable houses or not. They're my points, sorry. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Can I just only comment on the money for the 75,000. That has to go somewhere that is useful. It has to go to the Harlow local football facilities plan because it's part of that plan. So, and that's where the sport team has agreed for it to go because it comes, most beneficial to improve Church Lane. We shouldn't take it out from Church Lane. It's not their fault. There are lots of pictures. The pavilion that's not very good condition, and they need the money. If it stayed in Bushfair, it might not get spent in the right area. We wouldn't get spent in the right area. I can have some sympathy for that, but we have to look over the overall picture. What's the benefit for Harlow, and to improve the playing fields in Church Lane? I think it's a good thing. Right, there's no more debate. Should we go to the? Do you want to comment? Yeah, please.
So, Councillors, I heard your points. Just to sort of focus minds just a little bit on the matter of the viability discussion. So, the Council, as you all know, has an adopted plan. The plan says we need to provide 30% affordable housing. If that's not provided, then you move down to a viability assessment. That is where we are here. In this instance, the developer has provided a viability assessment, and we have had it independently assessed. So our own evidence is saying what is on offer is what we should accept. If members are minded to refuse this application on viability grounds,
Sorry to interrupt. I'm sorry.
Sorry, on a point of order, Chair.
I'm running this meeting, not you. Please.
Sorry, on a point of order.
Councillor,
Will you take a point of order?
Please. No.
Will you not take a point of
The
order?
officer finish.
Well, I'm just looking at
the Councillor Danvers, please.
You're going out of
Please do
procedure,
not
Chair.
interrupt.
You're going out of procedure.
Please do not interrupt.
But you're going out of
Please,
procedure.
if you want to come back, I'll let you come back when the officer's finished. Don't interrupt.
But you're going out of
Don't interrupt, please.
Well, you're going out of procedure.
so if members are minded to refuse the application on viability, we don't have any policy grounds to do so, which would then leave us open to an application for costs. Members are, this is a democratic process, members can come to any decision you want. My job is to warn you of the risks. On the matter of the principle of development, as the officer has explained, this site was previously used as a school. It is now moved, so this site is now surface to requirement. As such, there isn't a principal objection to development on the site. On the matter of open space, or playing fields, we have consulted Sport England. There's an assessment in the report which talks about the quantum of space, which talks about the quality of space, i.e. a five-side football field that doesn't have facilities, talks about access, it talks about decent usage, and in the round, and that's how the assessment is taken, is this playing field worthy of being kept or not, and there isn't an objection. So again, in policy terms, we do not have policy to refuse the application. Again, members can come to any decision they want. My job is to tell you what the policies are saying. Thank you.
Councillor Danvers, you want to put another discussion?
If I'm reading the agenda correctly, and forgive me if I'm not reading the agenda correctly, if I can just get it up. Councillors' questions and clarifications. Officers respond to technical planning questions directed by the chair. Councillors debate and make a decision.
So what are you arguing about? Why are you
Allow
interrupting?
the planning officer to come back again.
Absolutely, Chair.
Not again, you're making some comments which are justified comments. Directing the committee. Okay, that's all she was doing. That's what they're here for. Okay.
Can't come back and sum up, Chair.
Please, come on, this is the first one we've got in open, and it's been recorded. It doesn't look good at the moment. All right? We've gone through it, it's been a good discussion, so we'll go to the vote. We need some help here because the amendment. So the recommendation is on page 32 to grant planning permission with clauses with conditions up to 23, but there's some have been changed, so Gavin, can you help me?
Yes, so in terms of the supplemental agenda, the requirement for a contribution towards the footpath has been deleted, and then some additional conditions have been added with regards to, and there's a change to the Ecology Commission. So there's a commission with regards to delivery of footpath. There's a change to the plans, because the additional plans were submitted as part of the application, and a change to the Ecology Commission. So there's the main part is the change to the heads of terms with regards to legal agreements, deletion of the requirement for contribution towards delivery, because it's now done by commission.
I think I've got it now. So condition 22 is a new condition, which is on the extra papers that were sent this afternoon, I'm afraid. And condition 23 is a new condition, and 23 becomes condition 24. Right? So that's the recommendation. All those in favour of the recommendation? One? No. Put your hand up. If you don't put your hand up, I can't count you. 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, all those against? 1, 2, 3. So that's carried.